Do you hear
The people sing the song of angry men. It is the music of a people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes. Do, do.
And we have our intro.
Welcome to Board Gamers Anonymous, podcast about gamers and the insane fun we have at the table together. This is Anthony.
Hey, this is Chris.
This is Rob.
And this is Daniel.
All right, so this week we have a couple special guests with us, Rob and Daniel, who've hopped on down from Myriad Games. So we play games with them every week. They've, heard the podcast. They've given us ideas for the podcast. They've played games during testing for the podcast. Why not have them on the podcast?
Because no good deed goes unpunished, so we had to bring them on the podcast now. So that's a warning to all of you out there. If you respond to our Facebook email accounts or have a suggestion, we will eventually drag you onto the podcast.
Just watch out for the shackles.
You're not leaving my basement.
Oh, no.
They start chafing after a little while.
Yeah. At least there's no lotion yet.
I think that would help with the chafing, actually, if we were to...
Rob, do you want to get the host again?
No host, please, no!
But anyways, welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on. We got a few games that we've played together, some stuff that we haven't necessarily had a chance to get out as much, but it's going to be fun, especially our feature review this week. Rob's, it's running the table at the store lately.
Oh, quite literally. I pretty much showed every single person in the store how to play... the game, I'm going to not bury the lead, it's Quantum. So it's been a very fun experience, in my opinion at least, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Civilization, which all four of us actually played. Mm-hmm. Not a full review, because that would be 3 hours by itself. But
just like the game.
Yeah, 3.
Like Civilization in general.
Yes.
Optimistic.
Why is this Civilization not happening fast enough? Come on, evolve!
And then we're going to talk about a few other hot games coming out that have hit the radar for us lately. First up news. Obviously, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Chris and I are going to be at PAX in 2 weeks.
Yeah, this is PAX East 2014 up in Boston, and it's a kind of like the mecca for indie video games and board games, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to kind of try out new games, get involved in tournaments, and Anthony and I are really looking through the schedule for the upcoming events because we want to do everything, but of course everything happens at exactly the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's like all the board game tournaments happen between 11 and 1 o'clock. Wow. So we're really not sure yet what we're going to do, but we're going to try to do as much as possible. And actually, if you're out there in the Boston area or you'll be visiting PAX East, we would absolutely like to meet you. So make sure to send us a message and let us know where you're going to be at. And we'd love to play a game with you or stand on one of these ridiculously long lines, for the next 4 or 5 hours before we get a chance to play a game that may last 15 minutes. But it's hopefully going to be a great time. And when we get back from PAX East, we'll have a full report of all these new releases and all the game companies that are there and all the new upcoming promos.
Yeah. So it'll be me and Chris will be there. Dan and Kim will also be there with us. We're hoping to have a good time and play a lot of games. I'm not entirely sure how much time is going to be spent board gaming versus looking at video game stuff. I keep saying I'm not going to do that, but I know it's going to be split. So.
It's a fair ratio. You got to try and do a 50-50, especially at PAX.
That's what I'm saying, right?
You got to try.
Try.
Keyword on try.
Yeah. I'm afraid of the video games because I'm afraid I'm going to come home with a PS4 or something and have to explain to my wife why I quadrupled my budget for the weekend. Because it's going to happen. But yeah, that'll be fun. Lots of upcoming events on Staten Island here at Myriad Games too. Rob, you're really involved in Mage Wars at the store, right?
Yes, that's right. The Mage Wars Archmage tournament is nearing its final 2-3 weeks at this point. And once that's done, it's going to start up again, believe it or not. And it's going to start up again just in time for new expansions coming out for Mage Wars, because coming in June is the Forged in Fire expansion. And that's pretty much the big news about that. In fact, if you want to pre-order it now, you can at Myriad Games. So I do recommend it for those that are fans of Mage Wars or two-player games, especially.
Yeah, it's been a big event at the store the last 8 weeks. You guys having a big culmination mega tournament last week, or is it just going to be like a point up?
Well, the whole tournament's been a big mega tournament at this point. I mean, the way Nick, our friend Nick, structured it was pretty clever, where if you win, you level up, and as you level up, you accumulate more points for your books. So what happens is eventually everyone's going to be around the same area, same level. They're going to have X amount of points, and final round, it's going to have final rankings. Winner gets cash prize. Second place gets cash prize, like store credit, of course. Yeah. And every week you have a chance of winning promo cards. So there is an incentive to play, even if you're like just starting out now. I know another friend of ours, young Tom, just joined up in the tournament last night. So he's playing his first match this week.
Very cool. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's been like the big thing at the store lately. We've been trying to get a couple other tournaments set up, but it's, winter. This winter's been awful. So,
yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, timing has been ridiculous. I know the other big events that we usually have around the store are anything WizKids related. The news there lately has been their shipping delays, but I know there's some stuff coming up, right, Chris?
Yeah, our BGA Attack Wing tournaments continue. We're just finishing up the final event for the Dominion Wars. So we had a 6-month arc, which is going to end with a final battle for Deep Space Nine, which is this really cool kind of 2x2 foot miniature. And then what was supposed to start this month also was the Tholian Web episode from the original series. For you old school Trekkie fans, this is the one where the little ships kind of literally kind of create some kind of energy web that captures the Enterprise. WizKids has announced that they have tremendous production delays on everything. Mm-hmm. So your HeroClix, your Star Trek Attack Wing, and many other things have been pushed back at least a month. So the Tholian Web won't actually happen in April, but it will happen in May for everyone. And then the following month will be Arena, which is another 1-month event. You might remember the Gorn, which was this big green rubber monster that was fighting Kirk.
Yeah.
So that will actually happen, and you're actually going to see the prize ships, which is you couldn't even actually see in the show. So they actually went to some detail to create these. And then right after that will be the Borg arcs. So it'll actually be 2 3-month events where we'll be in the Voyager universe, and Voyager is going to be being released, and the Borg ships will be released. So there's going to be a little shorter kind of arcs. I think they learned from the Dominion arc, which was tremendous and very thematic, but took a really long time, and we're losing players because if you were following it as WizKids had created it, somebody could be 3 or 4 months ahead in points, and then nobody else could win. So they're kind of creating smaller arcs to kind of get new players in. It's a great system, and it's very simple to use. I taught Daniel, pretty recently how to use the Attack Wing system.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
Does WizKids, the way they set up these smaller arcs, are there all those points cumulative for the big tournament as well?
Sure. So they haven't released details about the Borg arc. They've been pretty kind of hush on that. They've only released very small details about what the ships will look like, but I'm assuming it's going to be in the same format where you gain points for the 3 months, and then whoever wins whatever the big prize is, which everyone's assuming is going to be a big Borg cube. So, even if you're not a Star Trek fan, you know about the Borg cube, and it's probably going to be another, 1 foot or 2 foot by 2 foot miniature, which is going to be crazy.
I want it so much.
I could just hang that on a mobile in my room.
Yes.
I'm telling you. So,
yes.
If you're not a Star Trek fan, this game really offers a lot of detail into the Star Trek universe. So it's a good way to kind of get yourself involved into it, but you don't have to know about the universe. So don't worry too much about, I don't know the universe, I can't get involved. You can. The cards are really easy to learn. The system is pretty simple. Now, if you ever have seen miniature games being played, they have tape measures and compasses and just rule books that seem endless. This is basically, you have your ships down, you have your cards that represent your crew, and then you put a cardboard template down that shows which way you move. So, pretty simple as far. And then once that happens, you roll dice and you see what happens after that. Now, hopefully, if you're not a Star Trek fan, and I haven't lost you at this point, you should know that WizKids is also releasing Attack Wing for Dungeons & Dragons. So instead of the ships, you'll actually have dragons from the Dungeons & Dragons universe to play. It's going to operate the same exact way as Star Trek, where you're going to have cards and you're going to have the same types of miniatures with the same types of templates, but basically this is going to print money, and it's going to bring the D&D fans together. So do yourself a favor, come down to Myriad. I will be happy to teach any and everybody who wants to learn how to use the system, so when the D&D comes out, you're all ready to go with that.
I think it's really a good thing that they're just reskinning the system over and over again sometimes, because I know sometimes it feels derivative when they do that, but with this system it's very effective. I mean, we played one round. By the end of it, I knew the rules, I knew what was going on, and they're able to build a feeling of theme very effectively by changing up the kinds of cards they give you and the shape of the miniatures and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And everybody can kind of pick the one they like. But then if someone else, like, I like X-Wing, but if Chris wanted to play Attack Wing, it's the same rules roughly. Like, I could hop into that in 2 seconds and know how to play.
Sure.
All right, so, I mean, we've gone over this 100 times. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but WizKids, man, paint those minis. Paint them right.
Yeah,
Please.
the paint jobs are always a big problem, and it's kind of sad because you really do love the IP, and it's like when you see these minis, you're like, why would you do that? Why would you paint this 4 different colors that was never used in the actual show? And it hurts. It really does.
My guess is they got the wrong palette number in the shop they're using it in.
I guess. I mean, if you're a painter, this is fine because the details are well detailed, especially from the looks of it. The Dungeons and Dragons look highly detailed. And obviously the X-Wing is painted beautifully, but that's because of Fantasy Flight.
Yeah. I mean, the models are fine if you want to strip it down and repaint it. Like, there's plenty of detail on the model. It's just...
Yeah, although the scale is cartoonishly off.
Well, yeah.
So...
Yeah,
Why is that shuttlecraft bigger than my battleship? No, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. It's good.
whatever, man. It's fine.
It went through a growth ray or something like
did.
that. Yeah.
All right. A couple other games we saw that are coming out soon. Look pretty interesting. You just posted something about an X-Files board game, Chris?
Yes, the truth is out there, although the details aren't out there. So all we really know is that there will be an X-Files board game, and we will buy it, and we will play it, and hopefully it's awesome because it's X-Files.
And that's all we know right now. So.
Look, I'm not afraid to admit that I'm an X-Files fanboy because X-Files was great, and it has a lot of possibilities to be a great game. I'm wondering, what way they're going to go with the mechanics.
I'm kind of hoping it's following Monster of the Week style episodes, because anything with that giant black oil story arc was kind of boring in the X-Files.
Yeah.
From what I remember, at least.
The invasion story.
Yeah, it was a 90s show.
It
when
was-
they tried to, because they were towards that transitional phase when stories started getting more serial,
Yeah.
and they didn't do a very good job of that.
It was like proto-Lost, and Lost
Yeah.
was like mediocre at best.
Lost was proto-Lost. Other game I saw that looked pretty awesome is Portal, the board game. Rob, you play video games.
I do.
You play Portal?
I did.
Yeah, good game.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, great game.
Will there be cake?
There will be cake. Have you seen this? There's like little tiny cake pieces.
Oh, at least
So-
it's not a lie then.
Yeah, exactly. So the story behind this is that somebody at Valve, I guess a few people at Valve, were like, let's make a board game out of this. And so they've been working on it for a couple of years. And then they're like, we don't know how to publish a board game. So they went to Cryptozoic to say, we want to print this board game. So now it's going to come out sometime later this year. So it says Cryptozoic on the box. They didn't make the game, if you don't like Cryptozoic games. Cryptozoic gets a lot of IPs. Their games are sometimes a little watered down with pretty thin mechanics. Games are always decent. Sometimes they're not. They're not mind-blowing, though. This is a Valve board game with Cryptozoic's influence. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good partnership, too, if considering Cryptozoic does handle a lot of outside IPs.
Yeah, and everything about what they put out is good. The artwork's usually good. The components are good. They deliver things on time. It's a good company.
Yeah.
It's just the games are not always mind-blowingly. It's not Fantasy Flight putting out these ridiculously awesome games with IPs on them. So
Yes, with ridiculous amounts of cardboard attached to it, too.
the tiny little cards.
Oh, do we really need these action markers? Oh, it says we do in the rules. Okay. Hey, we're all smart. We know it's an action. Put that away.
Just put a big pile in the corner.
One less thing of 100 out of 1,000 pieces.
Yeah, Fantasy Flight needs to buy a tackle company. Get those plastic boxes from the fishing store.
Just give them ideas to print more money.
All right, next up, some of the stuff we've been looking at that we want to play. Acquisition Disorder Corner. All right, so what games are looking interesting these days? I know Kickstarter has a lot of good stuff on it. We were just looking through this a few minutes ago, right, Daniel?
There's one game I was looking at called Heavy Steam. It looks really interesting. It's kind of like a customized mecha battle game in a steampunkish environment. It's starts off around $75 if you want to actually get a copy of the game to back it. The one thing that concerns me a little bit is it seems to be exclusively 2v2. I haven't looked at it deeply, 1v1, 2 players total. I haven't looked at it deeply enough to be certain, but...
Yeah, it looks like a war game, like that kind of,
which
command and color style.
Which means its competition is not the other board games that I think of when I think of board games. It's things like Warhammer 40k. It's these vastly more complicated and more flexible battle systems, right?
Yeah. I think for me, what'll decide if I'm interested is if it's, Warhammer size or, let's say, Battlelore size. Because Battlelore is a 45-minute game.
Yeah.
It's quick. It's 2 players, but it's short.
Yeah.
Warhammer is, 92 hours. I don't know how long it takes to play that game.
Well, it depends on how good you are, number one. As someone who used to play Warhammer, I can tell you that I was not that good. So, about 40 minutes as well. I do have a question, though, about the Steam. But are they pre-painted minis, or are they coming with full-on scale minis? How is it working with that?
They're coming with little minis, but they're just colored plastic.
Okay.
Colored plastic.
Yeah, you gotta paint them. Some of them are big, though, right?
Yeah, there are some kind of bigger ones that...
Tanks, right?
Looks like you can pick different categories of mecha to pilot. And
This is definitely the Battlelore / Memoir 44, where it's just literally one board. There's a line that divides them, and then you just set up your troops on one side or the other. You have your major main mech, and then you have your smaller kind of pawn pieces to kind of lay out. So,
yeah, we'll see how long it takes to play. It's got a long time left, though. I think like 45 days. So if you want to back it, if you want to take a look at it, even when you're listening to this, you've got like 5 weeks.
It's definitely worth taking a look at. The only thing that makes me nervous again is 1v1. I don't really do board games to play 1v1 all that often. It's
more like a video game kind of experience if you're going to do that.
Yeah, unless you're in a tournament, those one-on-one games don't really scratch the social itch.
Yeah.
And then even then, the tournament doesn't really scratch a social itch. It's more of a competitive itch. Mm-hmm. I own a lot of 2-player games because when I started collecting, I was like, oh, me and my wife are going to play all these games, which I have a 2-year-old, so that doesn't really happen. But, I do like 2-player games. It's just they don't come out very often.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't want to buy another one unless it's replacing one I already have.
Yeah.
And steampunk is like zombies. Whatever they throw on Kickstarter usually gets picked up.
Yeah.
Although I'm hoping that there's actually a bigger universe built behind this, because that's always what tends to be disappointing when you actually get to play the game. If it doesn't have a universe, a lore behind it, it's kind of like, yeah, my figure moves here and your moves there. That was great, I guess. And then you're just back to playing chess.
Yeah.
You get the mechanics down, but not the reasons behind it, basically.
Sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if I want to play a 2-player game, like at the store, I want it to be short. I bring the Duke with me every week for that reason. Like, hey, we have 20 minutes. Let's play the Duke real quick. It's a good one. Speaking of minis, of course, looks like there's a tactics version of Sentinels coming out. Is that what I saw?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, just confirming.
Yeah.
I saw that
I
there was
saw
a,
that too, and that's what I knew.
a tactical hex grid combat system based off the characters from Sentinels. The Kickstarter was... I can't remember where it started at, though.
In terms of
Price. So
it was like 50, right? Just for the minis?
Yeah, it was in the higher price range if you wanted to get like the minis and the battle system.
Yeah, this is Greater Than Games. They're using their Sentinels of the Multiverse kind of version with the cards, but actually this is Sentinels Tactics. So it kind of has that hero clicks without the clicks kind of setup to it, where you'll set them up on a hex grid and kind of move them and then attack that way. The Flames of Freedom. So this is about, probably the time of this release, you'll probably have about 14 days to still kind of pick this up. And as Daniel was saying, so you could get the figures, which I guess you could play with the card game if you'd really want to, just to have something. The figures are going to cost you $40. The game's going to cost you $50. If you really want to get everything together, it's going to be about $80 for it. So I'm a little concerned because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, Sentinels of the Multiverse, Greater Than Games, their components have been a little weak. And especially initially, their first release for Sentinels of the Multiverse, they were missing a lot of the chits that they needed to do. So they're kind of the opposite of Fantasy Flight, which is like, hey, this was supposed to have chits in it, but you know what to do, right? You're good at this. So, we'll talk about Sentinels a little bit later, but a vast universe, and this is probably another little part to their kind of empire that's continuing to grow.
Yeah, it looks interesting because it's 2 to 8 players. I haven't read enough about it to know, but I'm sure it's a co-op of some kind. I can't imagine a hex-based strategy game, 8 people fighting each other.
Who knows, anyway.
16 hours later. But tacking on minis for that, I'm one of those people. I'm the guy who helps all these companies put the minis out. Like, ooh, minis? Now I want it. I did the same thing with Takedo. I'm like, I don't really need a $100 copy of Takedo, but there's minis in it, so...
Did you say minis?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to back that. What is it? I don't care what the game is. It's got minis, right? So I'm backing that.
We can use those minis for other games, too.
Yeah, let's back that game, too. Let's back it twice. Let's get 3 copies of it.
My painting backlog is easily 300 minis right now, and we have Bones coming in 3 months, so...
Yes.
Oh, yes. I can't wait for that.
It's ridiculous.
So when is the Sentinels comic book coming out? Is there any word on that yet?
Are they doing a comic book?
I don't know. I'm just assuming they would at this point, because
They
they're already
should,
making a
right?
ton of board games.
Yeah, they should. I think it would help them. I mean, just team up with Image or Dark Horse or something.
Yeah.
One of those smaller publishers.
Yeah, they have enough backstory, too.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. $1 million idea. Go.
You're welcome, company.
Whose name I don't remember.
Whose name I forgot because my head hurts.
Those guys were great though. When we were setting up for Extra Life last year, he tried so hard to get us a copy of the game, and it was just out of print for that month.
Greater Than Games?
Yeah, and even the week after the event, he emailed me and asked, did you guys still need a copy? I'm like, well, the event's, it's over. Maybe next year we'll get a hold of you a little earlier, but they're pretty cool. And their game's popular, so buy it when you can.
Definitely. It's a pretty decent deck builder type of game.
So we'll talk about that a little later, because that's a cool game. Other Kickstarter stuff we saw, Chris, you saw Catacombs as a new edition, right?
Yeah, if you may have seen this before, or maybe you haven't seen this before, because Catacombs, at least for me, kind of was underneath the radar, because when you go to the game store, you're looking for these nice, colorful boxes with the visuals of the game, or somehow describing or showing the lore or the characters. Catacombs had this straight black, gray box with this little red ring, and it said Catacombs on it, and basically didn't provide you with any information or any reason to actually pick up the box. And what's inside is a Dungeons and Dragons, crawl game, but Catacombs is actually a pretty popular game. It's a dexterity game, so you have your characters. You can be an elf, you can be a warrior, a barbarian, and what you're doing in the game is you get these discs, and on the other side is all the monsters that you have to fight, and there's spots on the board that actually block movement. So you're actually flicking your warriors to attack the monsters and either hitting them to knock them out or knock them off the board. So in addition to just flicking your barbarian to hit a dragon, you can also have things such as an elf. Now, instead of just flicking the elf, you can actually shoot arrows by flicking little smaller discs at the monsters. Now, as I said, what kind of pushed me off this game was it was just incredibly bland looking. The mechanics were pretty solid. It's a well thought of game. It won a number of awards, but they're re-releasing it on Kickstarter with kind of a new cosmetic upgrade. So the artwork is a little more cartoony, and it actually has some type of a look to it. So instead of the ultra serious type of monsters and destruction, it actually kind of goes a little bit more of the small world type of tactic, which I think is more fitting for the game, because any kind of dexterity game reminds me of playing Caps or or Pogs or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to kind of get into the deep lore of this is dangerous and the monster's going to get me. Hold on a second, I need to flick this disc in order to save the day. And so I really like the idea that they're actually doing it in a more jovial, kind of fitting with the mechanics type of way. So Ellsworth Games is releasing this. It's got about, by the time you hear this podcast, about another week to go. And they're crushing all of their stretch goals. So this might be something you want to pick up. But if you haven't played a dexterity game, or you haven't had the opportunity to play this game in the past, definitely seek it out before backing this, because it is a very different game than your traditional dungeon crawl games, even though it does have that theme.
Pitch Car Dungeon.
Pitch Car Dungeon. Oh my god, that was a nightmare.
Or like Discworld, which was been sitting in the store for God knows how long at this point.
Yes.
Oh yeah, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants it. No, not at all.
Does not look good. All right, yeah, those are all on Kickstarter. They're all still available. They all can all be backed. None of us are backing any of them yet, but they look interesting. Which kind of got me thinking, because there's been a couple games that have been hitting the stores lately that I did not back, and now that I wished I had. And this happens all the time because Kickstarter's tough, man. Like, it comes out, it looks cool, you get really excited, and then you start to question whether or not the game will actually be any good. You don't want to spend $150 in a game you've never played before and find out it's cruddy. So it's, I always waffle back and forth on Kickstarters. I've only backed 2 or 3 lifetime, and usually they're like the lower cost ones, or a game I've already played, like Canterbury I'd already played, so I was fine with that. But like, Myth is hitting the stores now. And when I see the price, and then I see all the stuff you don't get in the retail version, and then I see all the stuff you could get on eBay for $800, yeah, I get sad because I'm like, I could have backed that for like $200 and gotten all that stuff, and either A, played it, or B, resold it on eBay for $800.
The air in the room just like disappeared the minute you said that. We were like sucked
so
in our
much.
stomachs by the thought of $800 for Myth.
That's so much money. But I know like Crossmaster Arena was the same. If you didn't back it and get all the extra stuff, it was almost $1,000 to get it all on eBay. And the only place you can get it now is in a convention. So we were at Comic-Con last year, and they had it at the Japanime Games booth. You could buy all the extra stuff, but that's the only place you can get it.
It's weird, like how this whole secondary market's starting to emerge now. Because of Kickstarter, you have all these extra collector's editions, specialty editions, whatever have you. All these extra pieces that are so hard to find because they made limited quantity. It's creating like $800, $1,000 price points for a game that could be only like $50 to $100 at most, maybe $200 on the higher end. Yep. It's so strange, at least for me. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think, but
yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a little weird. It's naturally scarce, though, right? Like, they only make as many as they kickstart. So if 500 people back it at that level, there's only 500 copies. 480 of those people probably want to keep their copy. You have a very limited market. Like, even a game like Coup, which had thousands of backers, that game was going for a good, 2-3 times its price on eBay for a while, because people were like, wait, this is good. I want all the fancy stuff.
And that's the problem with, Kickstarter and games is you can never capture the quality or the game mechanics without actually playing it, or at the very least getting high quality reviews. And that's really difficult. I know we'll be talking about Quantum in a little bit later too, but I remember seeing that on Kickstarter and just kind of circling around it, just because I'm not sure how this actually plays, and I'm not sure if this is going to be decent, and like, the art's kind of good, but so you do kind of look at these things and go, wow, it really doesn't seem to be worth that much. But at the same time, like you said, is it an exclusive? Is it limited edition? Plus, there's always a difficult with Kickstarter that while we are talking about the limited quantities that are being released, there's also the opposite is true, where the Kickstarter looks like it's going to be this limited quantity, once in a lifetime purchase, and then it's released before you get a copy that you backed, and it's cheaper online at the very least, if not in the store, and everything that you were backing as far as the stretch goals were concerned are included in the retail version. Okay. So you've now just handed over X amount of dollars for X amount of months for something that you have to wait for, that people who didn't back it got it before you did, and you feel like the biggest fool in the world for doing that. So it's a hard sell.
Welcome to Kickstarter. Thank you for your money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kickstarter's hardcore now, though.
Yeah.
And just the fundamental fact that you're just taking somebody's word for it. And they're like, totally, guys. Me and my friends, we have this game, and it's gonna be awesome, and it's totally gonna be worth your $80.
You just need to make sure it goes into my bank account in Nigeria.
That's the other side of it too, which is some games never get released, or are such poor quality that you're sorry you ever backed them too. Mm-hmm. So it ranges. You know,
The feeling of guilt for bringing it onto the world. I helped give birth to this monstrosity. Oh,
It's
God.
my baby, and it's a killer.
That's true.
This is the problem I end up having. It's like, that's why I don't back some of these things, and they look amazing, but I'm just like, I really don't know, and it's really expensive.
Here's a question for you, though. What about all the extras, all the stretch goals, and all these extra collector's edition bits that a lot of these Kickstarters focus on? Do you think that's even worth going in for the extra price, or is that more of like a dealer's choice type of thing, where it depends on the player?
I think it depends on the game, man. Like, if it's a game, like, let's say it's a game like, I don't know, like Rivet Wars, which just hit the stores. The amount of stuff you got if you backed at the higher level, like, it's extra scenarios, it's extra pieces, it's extra models, it's extra maps. Like, it just makes more game. You know, like, you could buy the box, it has a map and one army for each side, or you could buy the Kickstarter edition, which was like an extra $80 or something, and have enough for like double the replayability. And like, but now if I want those pieces, I either have to wait for them to come out as separate expansions, or go on eBay and spend $1 billion. It's not.
I mean, for me, the question's always going to be, does this let me do more things, or does it just let me look prettier while I do the same game, right? That's the second's much less interesting to me, right? Updated graphics or nicer minis compared to, right, entirely new scenarios, entirely new pieces. That's going to be something that I think adds value. And then you get the ones where it's like, it's signed. It's just, all right.
Yeah, I don't.
You wrote on my game.
That's vandalism.
Yeah.
That's not collectoring.
It's not cool, dude.
and I think that's what the difficulty of being a gamer is that there's a lot of different elements to us. There's the completionist, there's the collector, there's I want to get as much play out of my game. I don't care if it, if it ends up being a bunch of scraps, so it's really hard to gauge, as Daniel was saying, as far as, what does this really add to the game? Now, sometimes graphical updates and minis do add something to the experience of the game. Sometimes it's just superfluous. I don't know why I have the mini doing this, because it's not really getting used and it doesn't really add anything else to the game. So, yeah, you could have all those additional armies, but what's the use if you're only going to pull this game out once or twice a year and never really get to use them? So, as far as the cost of the game, you have to ask yourselves, how many times am I actually going to play this? Am I going to buy this game to put it on a shelf or maybe break it out once or twice? Then it's going to cost me $150 just for those one or two plays. Or am I going to play the heck out of this game, and therefore, yeah, it maybe cost $200, but I got, 200 plays out of its lifetime. So it's one of those situations where you really have to kind of gauge where you're at before you can kind of make that decision.
This also depends on what you value most in terms of the gaming as well. I know a lot of people, myself included, used to collect video games, for example.
Sure.
I still haven't even played half the ones I got. Some of them are unopened.
Yeah.
It becomes like not only like the fanatical, like you say, the fanatical completionist, but it's more of a, these look great on the shelf, I don't want to touch them,
Sure.
Versus, I can like play these every once in a while, but this game's kind of important to have in the collection to be untouched, that becomes part of that dynamic as well. And a lot of people actually would probably like, this game's not complete unless if I have all the promos, all the Kickstarter stuff, all the extra gold pieces, all the foil cards, or whatever have you. To them, that's more important than even playing the game.
Yeah, I think for all of us growing up in that comic book, video game, board game kind of world where things were kind of rare. And now, these days, it's not as rare. I mean, you can get that story that ran in that comic book arc that you didn't collect online, or you could play that board game by renting it, or that video game by renting it, or going to a local store, or going to a convention. So things aren't as rare as they used to be, like when we were growing up, or even our parents, where like you grew up, oh, that Superman comic, you can't find it again because it was this rare. And now they produce hundreds and there's digital versions, right? So if you love that video game, just give it 6 months, it'll probably be a digital version of it available too. And
or it'll be released simultaneously and it'll cost less too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is always the rub.
Yeah, I think for Kickstarter, a lot of the backing comes from the desire for the minis, and maybe the additional promos that maybe you'll never see or not. I'm not really sure, but that tends to be... I mean, we talked about Zombicide, I think, a while back, and that just broke ridiculous records just because of the mass amount of minis you could get. So it's hard. I think it's really hard for us making those decisions, where do you jump in and when do you just kind of kick the habit and just back away completely because you're going to do some serious damage to yourself if you're watching these things.
I just need another $20 for those meeples, damn it. Come on. You can give it to me. Come on.
Well, you know what it is? I mean, it's true because it's like once you get into the habit, it's like, you know what? $20 for the base game, but you know what? Just $5 more and you can get the second, race of orcs. You want that for $5 more, man?
And the best part is they're painted yellow.
Did we we hit 6 more stretch goals. You want to back the collector's model, right?
Yeah, it's another $20 and we throw in little plastic chits.
And you can tell the people who are good at this sort of thing by how much space they put between the two levels of backing, right? It should
Sure.
never be more than $5 or $10 because that's a big barrier. But if it's always just only $5 more, only $5 more, you're like, oh, I can put in $5 more. Even if they're asking you this like 20 times in a row, and by the end of the day you've just spent $400 on their games. Like, but it was only $5 more than the one right below it, and I got twice as many.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's official. Kickstarter, drug dealers.
Pretty much.
I was actually thinking of, do you want to supersize that? Like that's what I was thinking of. Like,
Also,
Is there really
dealers, yeah.
Is there really a difference in the end?
not
There is no difference whatsoever.
And at the same time, you have to be like a lawyer when you're reading the Kickstarter because it's like, okay, this is going to be released on this date, or 6 to 9 months later, or 5 years from now, or maybe with this quality plastic, but not the quality plastic we showed you online, because that's a different quality plastic that was only available for that level, and the retail levels might be available. But if you're a store, you can order 10 more copies of this. If you know that the secret code that will get you in, that you went online, you backed it, and you answered the secret question that got you in there, and you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. Just take my money and leave me alone. And speaking of which, I think my latest trek into that was Tokaido with the collector's edition, because originally when they talked about this, it was going to be the digital video game app Tokaido, which I was really looking forward to. And I really love Tokaido. I think it's a great kind of entry-level worker placement kind of set collection game. And, it was kind of hard to find for a very short time. And they released the collector's edition, which had this you could kind of get this base pack, which would kind of upgrade your components. And that's great, because clearly you don't want to use these little cubes that come with the game because it's really awkward. There was some awkwardness about the game with the components. So for $45, you could get these upgraded components like metal coins and little figures, and that's great. But hey, you know what? What about the collector's edition for only $73? Because you got the expansion, which sounds good if you haven't picked up the expansion. So for $73, I get the expansion too, and I get some upgraded components more than the base set. That sounds even better. But wait, hold on. I'm not done yet. Because just for $115, you could get the base, all the upgraded components, the expansion, and by the way, we added a new expansion. Didn't know that was coming. Plus all the figures, and the figures painted. So, yeah, I went around and around in a circle about this because I do love the game. I do love Japanese culture and all this type of integration. And it hit its $600,000 stretch goal for the upgrade painting. And knowing that as good a friend as we are with Anthony, he's not going to paint, was it 64 miniatures? I think that was coming in the game in the end.
I mean, sure, but it'll take like 3 years.
Which will probably be about the same length that the Kickstarter will eventually get back to me. So,
yeah, one thing I've learned from starting to play board games more and more is my usual strategy is I could buy the base, I play the base, and then I decide if I want to buy expansions. That is not what you were supposed to do. You wait for that one day when the store puts all 6 of them in a pile and says 20% off if you buy them all together, or you go to the Kickstarter and pay at the top level and get all 8 of them for what would be half as much, if you bought them individually, but you just have to buy in bulk. That's the strategy.
Always in bulk, and always keep in mind when it's coming out too. Like I mentioned, Forged and Fire earlier with Mage Wars. That was supposed to be out in January. They've been pushing it back. They keep adding more stuff to it, so it's actually somewhat frustrating. But at the same time, hey, it's good. It might be quality instead of a terrible expansion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always different reasons for the delays. If it's quality, fine. If it's printing delays, you're like, come on. Whiz kids.
You're already printing money, WizKids. You can now print this.
Yeah, buy your own factory.
I can't remember which game it was, but I remember their shipping delay was that they had realized the entire game was broken. Like, they were like a month away from release, and it was just like, oh, yeah, we brought it to a beta test tournament, and one guy just found this loophole and won with 2 cards, and we have to start over now. So sorry.
That's bad game design right
That's
there.
really bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
We play tested it for at least a month, guys. It was-
We found this one combo. Instead of throwing out that combo, we have to design everything around it.
My mom said she loved it.
Like my cousin, who's a real whiz with board games.
And that's the problem with the Kickstarter, because the market is being flooded with bad games, just like how the original Nintendo was flooded with all these third-party games that were so bad that it was kind of ruining the market. And so it's a problem for our for the gaming industry, because somebody gets involved in playing board games and then just kind of goes, this is not as great as I heard, because they're kind of getting a lot of the just junk kind of all throughout the way.
On the flip side, though, that is showing that this sort of I won't say renaissance, but a resurgence would probably be a good word for board gaming in general, because we're seeing a lot of these big games coming out. We're seeing a lot of these Kickstarters being successful, and we're seeing a lot of the good games, at the very least, not only getting praise on Kickstarter, off of Kickstarter, what have you, but being played elsewhere out there.
Yeah, I love the fact that especially these independent board game designers are actually able to get their products out that maybe in the past they would never see the light of day. So congratulations to them. I actually have more of a problem of these medium to big companies kind of just pushing out additional stuff just for the sake of it, or using Kickstarter as like a pre-order. Like, hey, give us your money. It's going to be the same price in the store 6 months from now. And
Queen games.
Or
A bad enough release can cause serious problems for the market overall. I mean, so E.T. almost killed
Yes.
the video game market in its early stages. I mean, one thing that's nice, though, is the board game market, I guess, seems to be stable enough now, right? So we've seen some kind of larger flops, right?
Sure.
Games with either very expensive IPs attacked, or that they came out and just no one even touched.
Yeah.
And the fact that the market is persisting through these flops, through failures, even failures of flagship companies on occasion, it's...
and on the bright side, there's no E.T. the board game that will destroy the market either.
Why did you say that?
Well, we need a new hobby, guys.
Knock on wood on that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a 30-year-old movie now? I don't think anyone remembers it. That's like under the 20.
Next week we'll be
No?
podcasting
Oh, shut
about
up.
Thai restaurants. Yeah.
Oh, that spicy curry, man. It was good, but it was a little sour at the end.
Spicy curry the game.
The delayed release time of my green curry was really just unacceptable.
It took 5 minutes too long.
Yeah.
I kickstarted 5 stars. They only gave me 3 stars of spicy, so they said the other 2 stars will be here in December. All right, guys. Yeah, so I mean, Kickstarter's great. Kickstarter's dangerous. Kickstarter makes you regret not backing things, but at the same time, then you're giving them your money for 6 months. Going to PAX in 2 weeks, I'm going to try to find like some of these Kickstarter exclusives. I'm hoping the companies are there, like the ones I know I want. Hopefully they sell it at a reasonable price, but it happens. I'll never have that full version of Myth. I don't have $800.
One day.
Yeah, right. When I have tons of money to waste on.
Exactly.
I bet Brian backed it.
I know Brian back.
So you know what? You'll get to play it at least.
All right, so let's talk about some of the stuff we have played lately, not just the stuff we're pining for. And so these are some of the games that are hitting our table lately. At the table this week. All right, first up, hitting the table. Who has played Heroes Unite, the new DC deck building expansion?
I have.
All right.
It was.
What'd you think, man?
It was a straightforward expansion of the mechanics we know and love. Some of the bigger things, the one that really drew my attention was the inclusion of, so there are new heroes. Chris is kindly providing me with a list. There's Captain Marvel, right? There's Batgirl, Hawkman, Nightwing, Black Canary, Red Tornado. But beyond the major hero cards, the ones that actually really got me were the power rings. So they followed the sort of Brightest Day, Darkest Night, where you got to meet every color of the Lantern Corps. And they brought almost all of the rings in. I don't think there's a Black Lantern ring, but there is the Black Lantern Corps card.
Yes.
and they have this synergy where they work together. One of the, I think, one of the unfortunate choices they made is to make it so the white power ring, if you have 3 power rings in your power lantern,
The White Lantern. Yeah.
the white lantern, the white power lantern. If you have the white power lantern, sorry, just the white lantern. It is not a racist lantern. If you have 3 of the power rings in your hand, anything that says the word power ring on the card, essentially, you win. It's over. Right? You don't even go to the usual close conditions. The villains don't have to be dead. It's not a... you don't go to points or any of that. It's just you had these 3 cards in your hand along with the White Lantern, and game's over. And I'm not fond of that.
If you have the White Lantern card and you play it, you collect all the rings.
Okay.
Kyle Rayner, who is the White Lantern,
sorry.
he's the one who wins the game if you have 3 power rings.
Okay. It's been about 3 weeks since I've played this, so my memory's bad on it. But yeah, so anyway, that mechanic upsets me.
Yes.
I don't think that it's in the spirit of the game to have a sudden end victory condition. It's a game about, it's a deck builder, right? And then now to have suddenly, forget building decks, I win.
Remember all those points you were collecting? Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. Don't care.
Remember how you killed all of the villains, and your deck is 3 times as big as mine, and you're definitely going to win by points. None of that matters anymore.
They activated their trap card.
There you go.
Yeah.
Your move, Kyle.
The only thing is, I mean, for me personally, I really love the Green Lantern universe and the Darkest Night arc, and was thrilled to see all the rings and all the different characters from there, and I think it adds so much to the game. For me personally, I'd rather have the expansion than the base game, just because I'm a bigger Green Lantern fan than the original kind of crew. But as you said, it's the same exact game with that little exception there as far as like the instant win kind of combo, which kind of almost comes out of nowhere. Yeah. But on the other side, they do have a number of combos. I think like the Mad Hatter has, like, if you have him in the hat, it does a couple of things. So they're starting to think a little bit more about how to kind of be more thematic, which I think was the original criticism of the game, which is like, hey, I have Batman and I have heat vision. That seems weird. I mean, I'm certain universe, I'm sure there's a comic where Batman had heat vision. I don't know. You could let us know about that.
It's Earth 6.
It's Earth 6.
Who knows?
Damn it, how did I forget Earth 6?
Because there's only 600 Earths or something like that. I don't even read comics and I know this.
It has a multiverse of different Earths, but they were eventually brought back together, at least for the time being.
So one of the things that interested me about the game, though, so it can play both standalone and you can put it together with the other deck. I think that there might be some instabilities if you put the two together.
Definitely.
I'm not sure how closely they play tested the combined sets. For one thing, it adds another card with the word power ring in it.
Yes.
Which might set off the trap card a little bit earlier. Also, weirdly, the Green Lantern, right, he's in the first game.
But not in the second game.
Not in the second game. But all of the lantern rings, right, all of the other lanterns are fighting Red Tornado for some reason, right? Like, because apparently they're...
So they're working on theme, but still...
they're kind of missing it a little bit.
I think part of it, too, is the original game had like the Suicide Squad, and if you collected multiple cards of Suicide Squad, you gained extra points. This one, I think it's the Manhunters, which is part of the Green Lantern universe. You collected multiples of those. So if you did shuffle everything together, you kind of have to be careful that you're not diluting the combos or making one combo way too powerful, because it could throw the game off. But you could definitely, if you took a little time, you can kind of pick and choose the villains and the heroes and the special abilities.
That does seem like it's a little too much work for something that should be very simple. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like if we're really going to like take our time to make sure this is all balanced, shouldn't it come in the box a little balanced to begin with?
And that's what's great about the DC deck building game. And we should also talk about that they're going to use the same mechanic, or actually they've used the same mechanic previously. The Penny Arcade deck building game was the same mechanic where you have this one currency that is used for both defeating a villain and to buying or purchasing a power or a hero. They're going to be using this also with Naruto and Street Fighter. So they're really kind of like throwing every IP they can at the game, which should be decent because, as you were saying, Rob, like, it should be an easy setup. And unlike Legendary, which is a good game, this game you can actually play and break down and be happy before the store closes. So
I think some real life is getting into that one, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, I think your point, Rob, is good. Like, you get an expansion, you don't want to be a pain in the butt to, like, combine everything. But I feel like that's a problem with almost any deck builder.
yeah,
Like,
that's true.
Most expansions are either separate or highly suggestive to be separate. Like, mini expansions, like, add these 30 cards. Like, Ascension was like this. You could get mini expansions, add a few cards. But most of the time, it was just basically the new game with new rules, with new cards, when you got an expansion.
Well, it's funny you say that, because another game that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, Sentinels of the Multiverse, had their Vengeance expansion. And, well, I mean, it did add new cards, new villains, but it also put a new theme on it where it was versus 5 villains instead of 1. So you fight a team of supervillains with a team of heroes, and you can use the heroes from the previous set still. So you could still mix them and match, but there's a lot less to worry about because the villains are already preset.
And so are the heroes.
Yeah, and the heroes are already preset too. So in a way, that the deck building that's done in Sentinels of the Multiverse kind of trumps what DC and Marvel have been doing with Legendary and Heroes of DC.
Well, I mean, so Legendary would be able to do the same thing. The key issue there is that you've got these little modules that you combine as opposed to just taking the whole decks and shuffling them together, right? So when Legendary has its expansions, right, it's just giving you new modules you can tack in, right? New heroes you can throw in. I mean, it does take an hour and a half to set up and an hour and a half to clean up, which is why it sits on my shelf, me going, I really loved that game, but I am never going to move it again because it takes forever.
It'll look pretty up here.
Yeah.
Right next to Summoner Wars or something.
Like I saw the expansion, I was like, oh boy.
Oh, at least I got a space right next to it for the expansion, so now I have both.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all these games, they kind of all scratch a different itch, which is a good thing. Like, if you're at the game store and you want to play something longer, Legendary's great. Mm-hmm. If you have an hour, you don't want to play Legendary, you've got DC. So it's good to have the options. And then if you want something co-op, you got Sentinels.
Yes.
I have not played DC Deck Builder yet. I've been meaning to. There's no reason why not. I love the DC universe. It just hasn't been out when I've been there. But, the expansion sounds cool. The whole thematic issue with the first game kind of always rubbed me the wrong way. Like, it wouldn't kill it. I'd still love the cards. I'd still love to play the game. But, Batman's utility built on Wonder Woman is a little silly.
When I had the same concerns, too. I was really hating on this game before I even got a chance to play it because I was like, I like this universe. Why do I have a deck of cards that has... like you said, Batman's utility belt, Wonder Woman's lasso, Superman's heat vision, and Green Lantern's ring. Like, okay, I guess there's a situation where that can come into play, but it does seem very odd. But the gameplay itself is just so light, it's so easy, it's so fun, and what the theme really comes into play is the cards themselves. So if you have like one of the Flash cards or something related to Flash, whether it's him or one of his sidekicks, it lets you draw another card. So it's like he's so fast that he keeps playing additional cards. Or I think we talked about like the Black Lantern, like as far as his little universe of cards and his villain card, you can destroy 3 cards from your hand and pick up 3 more cards. So it does fit that way. Whereas Legendary, what bothers me a little bit is it only once in a while hits on that. So Wolverine can discard wounds, or Hulk, when he attacks, he wounds everybody. But beyond that, there really isn't a lot of flavor to the actual cards. It's usually like, this card does +3 attack, this card does +5 attack. Like, all right, I see that, but I don't see why that kind of fits with the hero themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting, because despite having a more complex set of mechanics, they end up feeling more limited in Legendary than they do in the DC Deck Builder, right? Where they've got the one number,
sure,
but because they let the cards do all these weird things, and things with drawing cards and discarding cards and attacking your opponent in different ways, you get a greater feeling of theme. I always thought of it as like crossovers or guest appearances, right? The Flash is coming to help my Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah, even even the problem with the Kyle Rayner card, which is an issue.
Yeah.
It's still thematic, right? Because in the arc, spoilers.
No one cares.
Okay. I mean, he eventually, the White Lantern comes about because he, collects all the powers and is able to overcome. So it is still thematic. Mm-hmm. Whereas the DC, the DC Deck Builder does, like you said, the lightness on one hand and the heavy thematicness of the cards The legendary is almost the opposite. Like the board, the master scheme, the way everything's kind of set up. It's so the kind of universe that sets up for the game is tremendous and beautiful and well thought out. And on paper, it's perfect. The cards and the gameplay just kind of like, hey, here's a couple of, oh yeah, my heroes. They, are able to buy something that doesn't seem really interesting at all, despite the universe that I want to actually participate in. So, plus and minuses on both, but I guess they have a flavor for everybody is what you're looking for.
Yeah. All right, so first official review. Daniel, what do you think? Heroes Unite.
Heroes Unite, I liked it. I'm a big fan of the DC deck builder. I'm a big fan of you can reskin these mechanics a number of ways, but I think by keeping it simple and keeping it light, you get to go heavy on flavor. And it's one of the few games, every variant of the DC deck builder in this mechanic system. These games, you can play and have a conversation while you're playing.
Yeah.
And it's like, the rules, they're relatively simple, they're very straightforward, and it's still a lot of fun. And there's no running back to a rule book to double check, triple check the rules.
Cool. All right, so dodge, play, or buy?
Ooh, definitely play, and if you're a fan of this sort of simple deck builder, buy.
All right. Chris, you played, right?
Yes. As Daniel was saying, and we just talked about, Naruto's coming out, Penny Arcade's already out, DC Deck Building's out, Street Fighter's out, so there's a lot of flavors, and I'm assuming since these are selling so well, there'll be another dozen more by next week. So for me, the DC Deck Builder Heroes Unite is a buy. I'm going to definitely pick this up. It's a lot of fun. Daniel always has the original set, which for me also is a buy. So, because we sit down, what do you want to play? Let's play this. It's fun. We get it out. Everyone kind of jumps in. It's not something that is going to kind of, bring you down for 3 hours, because that type of game doesn't really, call for it.
Can we take bets on the next skin they're going to make then?
Yes.
My choices are Lord of the Rings or Mass Effect.
Okay.
Ooh, I could see Mass Effect.
Mass Effect was great.
Lord of the
be
Rings,
fun.
I think Fantasy Flight's got that one locked up.
I would buy Mass Effect. Right now, I would buy Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Everyone would buy
I'd play
Mass
that.
Effect. Everyone must buy it. Hypnotism.
I still haven't finished the trilogy. I gotta do that.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Me too.
So no spoilers.
Oh, you didn't finish it either?
I got a little bit into Mass Effect 3, and then life got in the way.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
I won't.
It would be a great deck building game for that mechanic would be Bioshock. Because you could get, depending on if you went the Infinite or you went the original, you could get the Vigors, or you could get, or you could have the Splicers, because they play differently. So you play your deck, and here's all these different powers that you can kind of throw out.
That'd be a pretty good idea,
yeah.
too.
That's good.
That's really interesting.
And then that side deck with the big villains would obviously, you would have the Big Daddy, and you would have the different, depending on which universe you're playing in, they have the major kind of villain battles going on there.
Yeah, I gotta play this game. Sentinels, however, is a game I have played, and you were just talking about it, Rob.
I kind of let that cat out of the bag that I tried out the new Vengeance expansion. And I actually enjoyed it a lot. It was tough. And I mean that in a good way. The type of, it's like an actual challenge without being murderously hard to the point where it's broken. What Vengeance does is you get 5 more hero decks. One of them is actually a team of heroes, and they kind of basically made them a mix of the Watchmen and D&D characters. So you got your healer that looks like Dr. Manhattan.
Nice.
You have a shadow dude that's basically your assassin. You got a tank and a magic user there, and the magic user is like 13, which is funny. Yes, because little girls are scary, right? As psychic powers.
Yes.
Typically, that's what you always, if you ever see a little girl in a movie, especially a horror movie or a sci-fi movie, run away.
Run, all the work and no play.
It's not the creepy alien. They're usually going to be your friend. It's the little girl that should not be there. That's going to kill you.
And continuing with that cliche, we now have a team of supervillains to deal with, and it's and they all have their own archetypes. You got a big bruiser, you got a guy that does a lot of defense, a guy that does a lot of attacking, a guy that poisons, another one that steals equipment. And the goal is to kill all 5 of them. And a full team of 5 versus a full team of 5 makes it really interesting. It does change the way the board goes. Instead of picking and choosing who goes, which I know is like a home variant for a lot of people, you now need to go in order, starting with the leader of the supervillain team, which is Baron Blade. He's returned. And then you just go down the list, 1, 1, 1, 1, until everyone goes. First team to survive wins. They don't like put the HP on the villains too high. It's only in like the 30s or high 20s, so it's doable to take them out. And once they take them out, they will have their own special bonuses they do each round too. So you actually do need to do a little strategy and cooperation to keep these guys down. And the reason why that's great, because thematically it feels like a comic book fight. I'm not the biggest comic book reader, but I've watched a lot of X-Men on TV. So it's, I'm pretty sure that's kind of what they tried to do in the comic books too.
Yeah.
You have these massive battles, you see like people shooting laser beams out of their eyes and whatever, and just hitting people with tentacles and punching them in the face and growing them in size and all this crazy stuff.
That's literally my favorite description of a comic book fight ever.
Tentacles in the face? No? Okay.
Just like random things you've seen in movies.
Random things you've seen in comic books. I just rambled on.
That's Avengers 2, the main fight.
Oh, that's going to be a fun one. But but that's what really was what got me for it. And the new heroes are pretty thematic too. They're pretty cool. Like I basically played their version of Beast Boy when I first tried it out, and he had different things you can morph into: armor, attack, and healing. They had a kind of like a electric type character who used a bow, a Hawk Girl type character. No, not Hawk Girl, Hawkeye type character with a bow. And then they had a dude that for some reason was unlucky. But every time he puts unlucky things... I know, it's weird, but every time he puts unlucky things in his pool, he gives all the teammates good luck. So it's a lot of... it's a very strange mechanic, but again, one of the strengths of Sentinels is the fact that it's all self-contained. So you don't have to worry about mixing cards, you don't have to worry about synergy with other decks. You could still work with the other decks with all these mechanics, and work with yourself, and be effective.
That's pretty cool. So, I mean, we've all played Sentinels and Multiverse, just the base game. I know, Chris, you have it, right? Mm-hmm. You got a good deal on it.
I do.
That's a fun game. It's a good co-op game. It's probably, like, for me, it's the most thematic superhero game I've played. The other ones are good, but they're, like, more thematic to the IP. This one's really thematic to the theme itself. So, I haven't played the new one, though. That sounds cool.
Vengeance. It's really good. I actually would, if you're a big fan of Sentinels, I would recommend to buy. First off, you're getting 5 more heroes, and you're getting a team of supervillains you can outfight. So right there off the bat, there's enough content to keep you busy for hours to find out different strategies on how to defeat them. First time we played, we lost three out. It was a 5-on-5. We lost 3 out of 5 fighting them. But it was a tough battle. We were able to win the day, but we kept, and that's part of the fun too, where you just lose people along the way. It's kind of like almost a war of attrition.
And that's what you want from a co-op.
Yes.
You want a co-op to be hard enough that you just barely win, if you win at all. Because you should lose co-ops. You should lose co-ops, I think, the vast majority of the time, because if you're beating it every time, what's the point of playing? The one downside with Sentinels that can be is it varies greatly as far as difficulty. So they've done a good job by placing ratings by the heroes and the villains, so you know like what's the complexity or what's the difficulty. But sometimes you're just getting beaten up really badly, and sometimes it's a walk in the park. But it's good to see that Vengeance kind of like gives you a good quality experience.
It does. I will say this in turn, like I know you guys have talked about components on Sentinels being not the most.
It's bad.
Well, I was going to say not the highest of quality, but bad works too.
Bad works too.
It's
But
effective, yeah.
in this one, it's the same quality.
Sure.
I personally don't have a problem with it normally because what I'm going to do is I'm going to sleeve them all anyway, and they're
Sure.
and I love like the thematics on the art and whatnot that they do. That's always cool, but yeah, the cards do bend a little too easily.
Yeah, the first time I opened the base game and we played, and you do handle the cards. I don't know if it's fair to say you handle them a lot, but you do handle them. And when I put them back in the box, because the box does hold so many cards, I noticed someone had a deck, was using one of the decks, and the cards were like, warping. They, just by handling them, they weren't fitting like straight as far as the other cards. I wouldn't expect that for the first play. So I've seen this done before. If you're going to get this game, sleeve it. I know it's expensive because it has a lot of cards to it, but if you're going to play this for any amount of time beyond just maybe 1 or 2 plays, you got to sleeve this game because the card quality is going to diminish rapidly.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, easily.
And the game is all cards. The entire game is so.
Cool. I want to try it out. I like the first one.
Yeah,
That was
definitely.
Cool. All right, so one other game we wanted to talk about before we got to the big review of Quantum, and this is not going to be a full review at all because all four of us played this and we know how long it is Civilization, the board game. So this was sitting on the used shelf at Myriad forever, and they had like a buy one get one free event at some point. So Chris and I went in on this and Rex, right? You picked
Yes.
up Rex. So ended up getting like the used price and then half off that, so it was a good deal. And it was a game I always wanted to try out, but I knew how big it was, so it was like didn't want to go full in on it. But broke it out, finally learned the rules, kind of as much as you can by yourself. And then we set aside a time, and we played on a Sunday, I think, the four of us, and it was a long game.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Just a tad.
I did warn everybody it'd be a long game, so at least it wasn't like a couple hours and it took 4. It is Civilization, the board game. Like that's as descriptive as you're going to get. If you've played the video game, you know roughly what you're getting into. You pick a civilization, usually one historic civilization. You'll have your thematic leader of that civilization, and they're all over time wise. Like the U.S. is Lincoln, Russia was Catherine the Great, China was Mao.
Chairman Mao.
Yeah, so they pick somebody iconic that you'll probably recognize. But then you have Egypt with Cleopatra, so it's all over the place. But that's kind of the fun of it. You're gonna set up. Everybody has their own starting tile, and it plays up to 4 people. So it's just the 4 of us. We play the full map. And there are so many mechanics here. I'm not even going to run through them. It's just basically there's 4 ways to win the game. You can win through technology, culture, economics, or military.
One of these is not really an option.
Which of these are not like the others?
You theoretically can win through culture. You're never going to win through culture.
Yeah.
Daniel, did you win that, or did we just end it?
We got 1 turn away from my victory condition, I think.
Okay, and you were going to win on economics, right?
Coins.
Yeah. And I was that close on technology. I was like tier 4 on technology.
You were right behind me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we realized I was going for culture, and that was a waste of time.
You were like a third of the way up the track. Like,
I know.
how is it even possible to get
I
remotely
have
close to the end
no
of that track?
idea.
Yeah. And
But-
military, in a 4-player game, military would be tough.
We didn't even try really with military. Now that I remember. In fact, we only did 2 fights, and we weren't even sure how they worked correctly.
Yeah, I mean, the game is awesome. It's super thematic. There's a lot going on. It takes a while to learn. Like, even though I'd read the rules and watched the videos, it still took a while. Like, we worked through the rules a bit. Everything really works really well, except maybe the fights, which felt kind of wonky. Like, the way the card system works, and the fronts, and the random values on those cards, and then the modifiers, and calculating the modifier. You need a calculator or an abacus or something.
We're going to do square roots to find out the fraction of pi. It's ridiculous. I mean, we don't need math in this. We just need, here's the high number, here's the low number. Who wins?
Yeah.
Usually the high number.
I was disappointed with the exploration part of it because it is a civilization building game, and you are exploring, the territories around you, and you have this little flag, and you have this little wagon, and the flag is your kind of military, and the wagon is your, scout, and it's very limiting, very small in comparison to the rest of the game, which is beautiful. The components are nice, the different ways to win, there's a lot of different quality, and yet the actual movement in the game is like, I'm moving 2 spots to another blank spot. Wasn't that exciting? And, the spots on the board, like the little tribes or the cities, they're fairly infrequently placed on the board. So maybe you were hitting 2 or 3 tribes, maybe you were hitting 1 or 2 cities, but that's it. So you can almost turtle the entire game unless you went pure military and just sit back and just see how you can rush towards a victory.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of technologies that speed you up.
Sure.
Like, by the end, I could move 4 spaces, and I had an extra movement per turn. But that was like tier 3 technology, and by then the board was all uncovered. So,
and there's not much to see on the board. I wish there was a lot. I mean, there's spots where there's resources, and there's spots where you can pick up different things, and depending on where you built the cities, that somewhat benefited you, but it really didn't kind of give me a flavor for anything, Like, during the game, you can build the wonders, right? it would have been a lot more thematic if there were spots on the boards where you pick a random card because you explored this fog of war, and maybe there was a wonder behind it, or maybe there was a hostile tribe that took out your troops. There was just more to the actual exploration instead of just sitting at home and kind of like building up whatever it is you were doing.
The exploration was underwhelming. The combat was, I thought, poorly handled. Didn't get a lot of sense of flavor from the game overall, and one of the 4 victory conditions, at least, is effectively impossible. It was a fun time primarily because I was playing with you guys.
Yeah.
It will never make it onto my shelf. It will never make it near my shelf. It is,
It's really disappointing because the Civilization video game is probably one of the best massive strategy games ever created for PC, for consoles now. I'm sure they have an iPad version. And it just felt weird. It just felt like, yes, the theme's there. You could see all the bits individually, they may work, but put together, it collapsed under its own weight. As I was playing, I was getting very frustrated and bored, realizing, all right, I'm not going to win. Might as well keep going culture, see how far I can get, just out of curiosity. I mean, we played 4 hours. I was only up to tier 2, and you were a turn away of... Dan was a turn away of winning. There's nothing I can do about that. There's no way to stop the onslaught of economics.
Yeah, and it's a tough one, because, like, I enjoyed it a lot. I think part of me wants to enjoy it more than I do, though. And I know that some of the issues we're pointing out have been resolved with expansions, but I never like when I have to buy a $60 game and 2 $40 expansions to cover issues with the base game. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, the newest expansion apparently makes culture victories very feasible.
It's like they patched their own game. Here's $40 for it.
Exactly, right? And
that's a little much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, if I thought I was going to play it a lot more, I'd pick these up because I do enjoy the game probably a little bit more than you guys, but not enough that I want to drop another $80 on it.
Yeah, I mean, for, $140 all told, $60 for the base and 240 expansions, and 4 hours of playtime, and that complex of a rule system, right? For that much trouble, I can have a lot more fun doing other things.
Yeah. I would have to say it's probably a major dodge, especially if you're actually fond of the computer game. I don't even think even having love for Civilization will save it in this case.
Yeah, I haven't played... For some reason, this kind of escaped me. I was probably playing more RTSs than anything else. So I never played it on, as a video game. I do like the complexity of the civilization building. I like the technologies you can kind of build up. I was kind of moving that way in the game. I like the fact the culture, and especially the different great, I guess it would be great men, and just men because I think there was only men in the game.
Yeah, it says great people, but they're all men.
It's sad because there was probably more great women, but nonetheless, I like adding that to the civilization to say this civilization has this philosopher or this astronomer and has this culture to them. It's, I don't know, it's almost one of those situations where the building of that thing is almost quality enough to seek out the expansions, but maybe at this price point, it's probably not going to happen. So if there was a way to correct it with the expansion, it would be a play, but as far as purchasing the game, it's probably a dodge just because it needs to do more in order to be great. The designers of this game owed the game more. And maybe they corrected it with the expansions, but maybe, I don't know, maybe a Kickstarter in the future where actually everything's kind of thrown into one box. Because the game deserves more. The video game, offers more too.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely like it more than you guys. Which sucks, because who's going to play it now?
Well, you could bust it out every once in a while. I would not play it. I'm just not going to buy it, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, well, I could see that. I mean, if I had paid full... Well, no, I wouldn't regret paying for it. If I'd played it before I bought it, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But I still say it's a play for me, and it's borderline buy. And I might still pick up that expansion that fixes the culture track issues. You look at the ratings here on Board Game Geek, and I haven't played it, obviously, but that expansion has an 8.5. It must fix a lot of shit.
What's the rating for the original Civilization game?
7.65.
Really?
That's a big gap.
7.65 is a strong rating, though. But I mean, it's one of those games. Like we played a couple things wrong.
That's true too.
You are supposed to fight those tribes that you unlock, and we were just flipping the tiles and taking them.
Yeah.
That would have made it a little harder to get those, and you would have lost more troops, which I think is important. B, none of us realized the culture track was cruddy, and we wouldn't have spent so much time on it. So, I'm not saying it would make the game infinitely better, but it would definitely help if we knew like what you're supposed to go for in advance.
Yeah.
I really like the theme of it. It really did feel like the computer game to me. Yeah, it's a strong game. I think it's a strong game. I think it's just the length makes it prohibitive, and there are some parts that are a little wonky, which in a game that long, you don't want anything to be wonky. You want it all to be really tight.
Yeah. Well, if you're willing to pick up the expansion, we'll jump back in to see if that fixes it.
Yeah.
I might give it a shot. Just have to do it soon enough that we don't forget the rules again.
We never really knew the rules.
Yeah, let's be clear about that. We can make up our own rules and it'll probably work.
In the game of Civilization, there is no rules.
Exactly. Here, I'll bid 4 spades on this.
I will tell you this: like, if you want to play this game, find somebody who knows the rules well. Because I tried to learn them, and it was hard. And I'm good at learning rules, and it was hard. There's so many things.
And there's multiple versions of this game, right? And not just the Fantasy Flight.
Yeah, Eagle did a version in 2002, which is 800 miniatures in a coffin box. So if you think this one's a little wonky...
the listeners at home can't see the jaw drop that I have. 800 miniatures?
They have it in the store. They have a used copy in the
Are
store.
you serious?
Yeah, you should check it out.
How much is that going for?
It's $100 used. God knows what it costs.
Oh my goodness.
Although there's a used copy on Amazon, according to Board Game Geek, for $50.
My goodness, 800 miniatures. What the heck do they have in that box?
I don't know. I mean, like, every card, basically, that we had in the Fantasy Flight version was probably a miniature.
Oh, goodness.
So.
For once, the cardboard of Fantasy Flight is useful.
Pretty much.
You mocked it, and now it comes back to haunt you.
No!
Yeah, it's $130 on Amazon.
Wow.
That's a big game. So, yeah. I mean, we'll give it a shot again. Maybe give it a more formal review. I think everybody's opinion's fair. I mean, I don't disagree with any of it. I didn't feel bad at the end because I did warn everybody, but it was a long game.
So. No reason to feel bad. It's
no,
cool.
I never feel bad.
And now for the feature review.
So the feature review this week is going to be Quantum, which is a game made by Funforge. It was a Kickstarter game, and our store Myriad Games finally was able to get in a couple after basically waiting 3 months for pre-orders and whatnot. The way Quantum works is really simple. Your goal is to colonize a bunch of planets on a randomly created map, and the game actually provides you with some 3-player maps, 2-player maps, 4-player maps that you can make yourselves. And you colonize them by putting cubes down on the planets. Each of the planets has a set number of cubes you can put down, and you can never put cubes down on the same planet twice. Once you put down all your cubes, you win. Of course, that's a lot easier said than done, because the way to do this is to fight the other players for dominance of the galaxy that you're in. You do this by using D6 dice. Very simple, regular face-out, like almost Vegas dice, really. They act as your ships on the board. You can move them at their face value from when they're facing up. So if you have a 1, it only moves 1 space on the board. If you have a 6, it can move 6. And they all get their own special powers, which you're allowed to activate once on your turn. The ones, for example, are big battle stations. They can shoot somebody that is adjacent to them. Whereas the 6, you get a free reconfigure, which is a free re-roll of the dice. Because one of the mechanics in this game is that you need to use 3 actions on your action turn strategically to take over planets. This includes reconfiguring your ships on the board, where you pick a die and re-roll it, and it becomes that new ship. This includes deploying ships that were destroyed in a fight, and you deploy them where your planets are, the planets you control. Moving and attacking or go hand in hand. You have to attack, you need to move a ship. The only exception is the 1, because it's a battle station. It just sits there because it looks pretty. And then you could also either research. There's a research mechanic which gives you bonus cards that do bonus powers in the game. Or you could construct cubes, which takes 2 out of your 3 actions on a turn. So there is a lot of strategy in what you should do on a turn, what you shouldn't do. The game also favors aggression. If you attack the other player a lot, you can gain dominance in the galaxy once you get from 1 to a 6. Once you get a 6 on your dominance die, you're allowed to place a cube anywhere on the board for free. And unlike other games, the lowest number actually wins. So the battle station will always be the most powerful ship you fight, and then you roll a second die and add them together. The last thing is the cards that come with it, which is really just extra powers. You have an instant deck, which does things a one-time use, like a second turn where you can do 2 actions. You can increase your dominance quickly, or you can expand by adding another ship on the board. The other deck is a white deck that gives you permanent powers that do special things, such as a free reroll on attack, an extra move action for one of your ships. All these different powers are kind of like Cosmic Encounter in a weird way, where they kind of break the game, but in a good way where it's balanced enough. So because you're only allowed 3 of them at a time, and they all do different things or similar things, which gives you synergy to formulate a strategy where you could win with that. Note I said could. There's so many different ways to actually win the game that there's actually a lot of balance in terms of the winning conditions. It's not easy getting 5 to 7 cubes on the board. It could take at least an hour, a good hour, if you have very good players. And that's pretty much how the mechanics work for Quantum.
Yeah, this has kind of been your game lately.
So yeah, it has been.
This is why you're leading off here. I've played it a couple times, but I've seen you play it, I don't know, a dozen. Easy.
I think I've taught at least 20 people how to play this game in the store. This is the next tournament. No, I'm kidding. But
it could be. This would be a good tournament game, I think.
I think it could be. It'll need some tweaking, though, because, as I said, it's not a downfall, but one of the issues with the game is the length. I mean, because the way the game works is that it has no set map. You can modulate the map to any form you want. And because of that, it could change the dynamics of how the game works. You could have like a very tiny map which favors a lot of aggression, a lot of fighting, or a very large map which favors exploration, where I might not even fight a certain player for a long period of time. I could just stay in my corner and try and achieve greatness there. So there's a lot of different styles of play, and I would argue that some maps are more equal than others after playtesting a couple of the 4-player and 3-player maps, but what really sets me off on this, what really I love about this, is the fact that it is modular. No game is the same. The maps may be the same, but how you play them is different, and that's always a plus in my book.
Yeah, we were just talking about Civilization previously, and it definitely has that 4X type of feel to it, because in the game there are a lot of paths to victory, and fortunately they're not as complex and worthy of Civilization. So you could explore, you can expand, you can exterminate. It has a lot of flavor to it as far as the different things that you can do that the mechanics allow. So you do get that kind of feeling in a really kind of basic type of way. I mean, you're just using dice. And the boards are pretty simple too. So there really isn't a lot of like visual cues of this as being a vast space armada kind of exploring the galaxy and landing on these planets. But the mechanics themselves and the dice is very ingenious how they kind of use the different pips and to kind of play different roles.
It's really low key, and I think that's kind of one of the charms of the game too. You don't need minis to represent all the different types of ships. Especially with the mechanics of like reconfiguring ships. There's certain cards that let you do that for free. There's certain cards that let you choose what they are. That's actually a major mechanic in this game, so the dice are almost mandatory in a way, and it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think you could replace the dice with anything. It's a must.
And it kind of fits that Alien Frontiers, Kingsburg kind of situation where your spaceships, but also like your spaceships or your influence is based upon the die rolls.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think I had a lot of fun with this game. I think we got a little caught up on some component issues early on. I think we should cover that first, because if you buy this game, off the shelf today, you're going to have some issues.
Oh yeah, very sticky ones, from what I remember. It felt like the dice were literally just made out of like oil resin or something, because they were like sticking to the plastic on the board. They were getting the cards all a little dirty. There was some misprints on the die, some cracks in the die. I mean, if you look at them, like they look like very ugly gummy bear candies that you just want to munch on.
Yeah, the edges are all really soft, like they're almost rounded.
and the dice stuck together. I think, Rob, when you opened this game, we kind of pulled the dice out, and they were just like, this is really weird because, of any die that's used in any game on the planet, the one that's always most precisely crafted is a D6 because it's used a lot in gambling. And here are some basic D6s. I like the color, but they're D6s, and there's no reason why there should have been a problem with the creation of these, the quality of the components, the painting the pips. I mean, we complain about WizKids as far as like, hey, that paint job is bad, or the eyes didn't look right on this, but these are just basic pips. And I think one of your dies, the 3 is a 4. And
Yeah,
a 4 is
yeah,
a
no,
5.
we have one of our green die is a double 4 because they mispainted it. So, hey, it's a double 4. Hey, I get this extra movement, right? Yeah.
I mean, to their credit,
That's the house rule.
they did send you new dice.
Oh, yes.
But he had to request those.
Funforge, true, but Funforge did put out the all points bulletin. If you do have an issue with the dice, we understand. We apologize. We're going to make it better for the next print run. You can request them. We'll send you the dice for free. It only took me 2 days. So I sent them the email 2 days later. Bag of dice and a free promo tile, which is always a nice bonus.
That's cool. I mean, it's a lot of times when people are replacing components, it'll be 4 weeks, and they'll make you send in the old ones.
Sure.
So then you can't play your game for 4 weeks.
And we were talking about this earlier. This was a Kickstarter game originally that I had seen, and the dice components would be something you wouldn't be able to tell on a Kickstarter until you got that mailed to you 6 months later, and just be heartbroken that the quality of the components were terrible. Now the other side, the artwork is amazing. At least it really has that kind of its own space opera universe. Now usually when someone tries to do a space universe, it's usually either a ripoff of Star Wars or Star Trek, or it's something so completely out there that it doesn't really gel with anything. And it's hard because if you're doing a fantasy universe, it's always the standard elf, dwarf, orc, dragon kind of thing. So there's really no messing that up. When it comes to what's truly alien, what's truly different, there's so much room to get this wrong. And they did a nice job showing, I guess would be either futuristic or alien technology. The box is beautiful. The cards that come into play, the black cards and the white cards, really have a nice flavor to it. And that was one of the things when I looked at the Kickstarter, I was like, I think I might want to back this just based upon the art alone because it was so nice.
And that's a nice touch, even on the big cardboard placemats you get. Each of the ships, the ships represent the dice on the board, but the ships on the card are always different, even though they're the same mechanics for each of the ships. I mean, every color has its own alliance or confederacy or whatever it has. It is a little, meaningless. That does not matter. It just matters, the color you're playing as on the board, from a mechanic point of view. The themes usually come from the white cards you get, where you get these different powers that kind of give you more flavor. But there is a lot of great art on there. There's a lot of great art on the cards, especially some of my favorites. For example, are these white cards where you just look like you're insane. There's a card called Ferocious, where it's a dude yelling at a monitor, and it's just seems like very space opera to me. Seeing a dude yelling at a monitor, I don't know why. That's a Star Trek thing, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Go for it.
It's not only are all the cards well drawn and the placemats are well illustrated and well laid out. That's all of the rules that you need are contained on the placemat and any cards you have attached to it. And whenever you can make a game that simple, that elegant, I'm already on board. Right? That's a big sell for me.
Yeah, I mean, Rob just shared the rules with us. That's all the rules. We're not skimming over anything. That's how simple the game is. And teaching it, how long does it take you to teach people? 5-10 minutes?
Not even. It was to play a game first time with the basic board would be about an hour, but to tell them how the game works, the flow, would be about 5-10 minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
So, and what's great is that you can teach multiple people at once because you can visually show how it works on the board. You could show them how the board is modular. You can show them all the numbers and cards mean. It's just so easy.
Everything's in front of you. There's no kind of hidden information. So roll your dice and I'll tell you the different options you can take.
Yeah. Now I'm going to say I do have one issue. I think the cards are genius because you get to choose between the black cards or the white cards, and the white cards are ongoing effects, whereas the black ones are usually more immediate. Hey, this benefits me right now, but then I burn through it, right? Sometimes, if you're lucky, and this is unlucky to everybody else, a couple white card combinations can break the game.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
To a degree that it's not fun for anybody else.
That is true, yeah.
And it happens. And it's not going to happen often because there's so many of them and they get shuffled together. But if you're really lucky and get a card that, like, lets you re-roll, lets you get more research or something, and then piggybacks off that in some way that allows you to, use that in a more effective manner. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I've seen it happen a couple times.
One example I can think of, I don't know the names of the cards perfectly, but it was when I was playing with our friend Rich. I know one card, he had Plundering, which anytime you destroy something, you get extra research points. He also had the card that caps your research at 4, so you can get cards at 4 instead of 6. He used this to his advantage to basically momentum, dominance, aggression, all this stuff to basically build up himself where it was almost impossible to catch him. He could win, on any turn he wanted. And he did, actually. Because you just had that combination where the research would pay for everything else.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's part of the game. You're trying to build your own engine, but just because there's only 3 card options, some of the cards are overpowered when combined with each other. Your engine can just obliterate everybody else's to such a degree that the balance disappears.
So one of the combos that I had in the game was Dangerous and Eager. So I kind of wandered the board without any concern about getting attacked because Dangerous allowed me to destroy both ships. So if I was attacked, I could destroy my ship, destroy your ship, so way to go for you attacking me. And then using Eager, I could redeploy the ship without taking up an action. And it actually even helped me because I could deploy my ship wherever I had a base on another planet. So maybe I was way off and wanted you to attack me, so I could just pick it up and throw it back somewhere else. So yeah, that works really well. So a lot of these combinations, as Rob said, were game breaking in a way, but in a kind of fun way because your race did have a flavor to it, which, the game itself was very generic as far as you all have the same dice, you all do the same movements, so the white cards added a lot to the game.
Yeah, now there's a lot of these combinations, and I think 99% of them are good. Everybody's going to have the same advantage because there are so many possible combinations. It's just occasionally one will feel a little imbalanced. If you get Rational, all of your attack and defense rolls are 3. Tack on Ferocious, which subtracts 1 from every roll, and now they're all 2s. There's another one in here if you have 2 dice parallel to each other, you can subtract 2. So then you're rolling a 1 every single time. You're going to win almost every roll that way. It makes it, and it's hard, the odds of getting both those cards is not really great. So it is luck. It's not like the game rewards anybody for doing something over anybody else. It's just, if that does happen early in the game, other people are going to have a bad time.
There is also different ways to eliminate those cards as well. The black deck has a couple of sabotage cards, which forces the player to get rid of one of their white cards. And if you see potential combos that you don't want other people to have, you can mill the board. You can eliminate the entire board by whenever you place down a cube or get a research. You say, I don't want a card, I'm just going to get rid of what's out there. 3 new cards. Have fun.
That's true. That is fair. Yeah, the game, obviously when they play tested it, they must have seen these things. There are ways to counterbalance it. I think it's more likely to happen in a learning game where people don't realize you can do these things or don't see that somebody else is stacking these cards.
It almost reminds me a little bit in a way of King of Tokyo, because you do have such a dice mechanic to the game, and then you do have these special abilities that add to your play, which kind of benefits you or can kind of throw people a little bit. And it's really a lighter version of deeper games, but it definitely does grasp some sort of that element of that space exploration. So it's definitely not Eclipse or Twilight Imperium in any stretch of the imagination, but it does kind of give you that little entry level to those games if you haven't had a chance to play those yet.
I said that's one of its greatest strengths is that it is not like Twilight Imperium because, no offense, Chris, but Twilight Imperium is a tough game to get into.
Oh, sure. But it is one of those space opera epic games where you're definitely living the 4X type of universe. So
I would honestly put this more akin towards a Cosmic Encounter type of game because of the randomness, because of the way the powers can be completely different. And for me, that's actually more fun. I'm a big fan of space opera stuff. But in terms of like board games for it, there's very few that can catch my attention.
Most of them end up being too long.
That's part of the problem, because they try to go like, here's the culture, here's the background, here's what they can do, here's all these special powers you can get. 3 hours later, you're realizing, well, I've only used that special power once or twice. It has not benefited me one bit ever. Meanwhile, there's an armada killing me, and my armada can't do anything to them, and it just gets boring. It becomes like routine. At least in this, like, it's very simple. You just want to try and put exact numbers on a planet. One thing that actually we didn't mention was that to actually colonize a planet, you need the exact number on the faces of the die. So if there's an 8 on that planet, you need 8 on 2 dice, to do 2 or 3 dice to somehow combo and do that. That's just very simple. There's the combat mechanic, which is lowest number wins, and you go from there. It's a game that honestly feels like it's designed to be more of a game than an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's... A lot of times I'm in the mood for something, more sci-fi, space opera, and there aren't that many. So this is a good one. Like, it fits in between, like you said, like Cosmic Encounter, where like, you can play it in under an hour. Nobody has to be, it's not super AP.
And it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If this was a 3-hour game, we would be having a completely different conversation right now.
Probably. In 3 hours, we can try out 3 different boards, which is part of the fun.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, so let's talk about some ratings here. So, Rob, this is your game. Is this a buy, play, or a dodge?
Well, since I bought it already, I mean,
I wonder.
I'll be honest with you. I want to say it's a buy. The current print run right now, I would probably avoid, mainly because of the dice. The way the dice were set. It's not exactly the best quality. I will say this, though, if you don't mind, like, going to FunForge and saying, hey, my dice kind of suck, can you please send me new ones? And they'll send it to you. Like, I got my dice back in 2 days, like I said before. They're going to be pretty good about that. And they even sent a confirmation email making sure it came in and all that stuff, which was nice of them. They didn't have to do that. That's good customer service. I would say if you don't care about that, and if you're thinking the quality's not up to snuff, definitely buy it. But it's definitely a play for sure, and I do recommend it. It's a great intro game for the gaming as well. You can get people involved in this because you can show them, like, this is how modular boards work. This is how a dice mechanic can work. This is how the cards work. That's good stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you. I think play for sure. It's a great game. I cannot recommend anybody buy it at this point. They've got to fix the dice in the next print run, especially at the price point with those dice. That's
What is the price point for this game?
60.
It was $60.
So, I mean, if you're getting it for 40 online, maybe with the dice fixed. 60 with busted dice. That's tough. But the game itself is really good. Like, it's not a diss on the game. It's just a matter of economics. And I know it's a Kickstarter game, so that happens. Prices are higher initially, but that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, it's an innovative and interesting game with a simple rule set, and it was a ton of fun to play. And I was going to say buy until I heard it was a $60 price point instead of the instead of the $40, which is what I had just assumed it was going to be something like 40-ish. And I was going to say buy and just email them and get them to replace the dice. It's worth waiting 2 days. Yeah, I don't know about the 60. It is absolutely a play. Buy, definitely hold off would be my thought here. And I might hold off until the price either drops down or they add more content, because I don't know if I'd feel $60 is.
I think for me as well, this is a play. This game has a lot to offer in a very light package and very gateway type of game. Kind of get involved with it. And as Rob was saying, you could teach this game very simply because everything happens in front of you. You're rolling dice, you're checking your playmat. Not really that difficult. $60, it doesn't rate. And even if the dice were quality, I think it's still missing something for me. I mean, the artwork on the cards are great. The multiple combinations are great. But I don't know, maybe the rocket dice from Alien Frontiers, or maybe the boards themselves are a good thick quality cardboard. But I would like to see something a little more complex, in the artwork there, because they really, they dropped the ball. They did a great job on the cards, and then the plants themselves are kind of generic, the artwork, and especially I would have liked to seen some sort of either fog of war where you're not sure what you're walking into. Maybe it's a black hole, or maybe the planets had some sort of bonus to them or detraction, like, hey, this is a gas giant, -2 to all attacks. Or you lose a ship in this area. So the board itself had some more additional quality to it, other than just the combinations of how you set the board up.
If you gave the board more character like that, I would definitely start feeling more like $60 is a reasonable price.
There's always the potential for more expansions.
Sure.
We poo-pooed on a few of them earlier, but like in this type of case, this would be very easy tile expansions. All you need is
Sure.
like another set of 10 tiles which do special abilities like that. So I think there's a lot of potential here where it could get become a better game than it is.
And this is almost a game that's kind of like screaming for a reskinning too. I like the fact that they went out and did their own universe, but like you were saying, this could be a Mass Effect game, or it could be a number of other, StarCraft game or something that very simply could be turned into something with a bigger lore to it.
Pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to imbalance the player cards. Like if you did StarCraft, you'd have to imbalance them a little. Like Zerg couldn't play the same as Protoss.
But maybe you would have Zerg has multiple units. Maybe they have a 20-sided die.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they would have a lot of Zerg, but they'd be very weak. Where the Protoss would have
More tech. Yeah.
yeah,
But how would we do a Zerg rush?
a lot of dice, a lot of little dice.
That's very true.
8
Yeah.
4-sided, or 20, like you said. 'Cause
Yeah.
Going to high numbers.
Yeah, 20's too high. Make it a 10-sided.
Yeah,
That way
20
you
is
mo-
pretty high.
Yeah, making it like if they move 10 spaces instead of 8. I mean, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
And now there's your Zerg rush right there.
There you
Four
go.
tens
Yeah,
after you.
You have a ton of dice out, but it'd be impossible almost to land like the right number in any planet to colonize it.
Exactly. Well,
You could destroy everybody.
all you need is one dice for a 10.
All right, so I think it's pretty even across the board. We all really like this game. We're a little iffy on the price and the quality in the current edition. Obviously, if you're going to get enough play out of it, even those things probably aren't as big a deal. Like Rob, I'm sure you don't regret this decision buying this.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, like I said, I've taught literally about 20 people in the store how to play this by now, and I've had several of them keep coming asking for more. Hey, did you bring Quantum? Hey, you bring it today? We're gonna play it, right? So, it paid for itself in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had a lot of fun with it, and I definitely want to play some more. All right. But that's everything for this week. Real quick before we go, of course, follow us on Facebook, Board Gamers Anonymous, Twitter at BGA Podcast. We are on Board Game Geek. Don't know the URL, but it's on there. Just search for us. And BoardGamersAnonymous.com also, where you're gonna find all the show notes, all our past episodes, easy to download.
And if you live in the New York, New Jersey area, make sure to come down to Staten Island at Myriad Games, because that's where most of us hang out.
Absolutely, yeah. We're there every Sunday officially. We're there every Thursday officially, and we're there every other day of the week unofficially. You'll find somebody to play a game, and if Rob's there, you can play Quantum.
There you go. You'll get to meet the face behind this lovely, lovely voice.
An opera singer that he is.
Smooth jazz time.
All right, guys, that's everything for this week. This is Anthony.
This is Chris.
This is Rob.
And this is Daniel.
Until next time, we'll save you a seat at the table.
Awesome. So let's pack this up. Let's get back to Marion and play it after lunch.